I am 70 years old, and I spent most of my life believing something that turned out to be completely false. Not a little mistake, not a small misunderstanding, but a lie so deeply rooted that it shaped the way I worked, lived, loved, and even saw myself. I believed that happiness had to be earned, that I had to prove my worth before I deserved peace, that life was something I would enjoy after I achieved enough, after I became someone others respected. But here I am, decades later, looking back and wondering, why did I wait? Who told me I was not enough as I was? Why did I think joy was something that came later, rather than something I could live with now? Maybe you have felt it too, that quiet pressure to chase, to climb, to win. But what if it was never about that at all? What if the life you are hoping for is not ahead of you, but already within reach? Let me share with you the truth I wish I had known much earlier. 1. The lie we all buy into early. From the time I was young, I was taught a very specific message about life. It did not sound like a lie back then. It sounded responsible. It sounded wise. I was told that life was something you earned, that happiness was a reward, that first you worked hard, proved yourself, sacrificed, and struggled, and only after that you would be allowed to enjoy your life. So I believed it. I believed that if I stayed focused, stayed disciplined, and delayed my happiness, everything would eventually make sense. I told myself that joy was not urgent, that rest was something for later, that peace was something you reached once you had done enough. And like many people, I assumed that later would always be there waiting for me. I did not question this belief because everyone around me lived the same way. My parents lived that way. My coworkers lived that way. Society praised it. We admired people who pushed through exhaustion, who delayed pleasure, who wore stress like a badge of honor. And so I learned to silence my own needs. I learned to ignore the quiet voice inside me that asked for rest, for meaning, for joy. Every time I felt tired or unhappy, I told myself it was normal. This is just how life works. You struggle now so you can live later. But no one ever explained when later actually arrives. Looking back, I see how dangerous that lie really was, because it convinced me that the present moment did not matter, that my life today was just a rehearsal for some future version that might never come. And when you believe that, you stop paying attention. You stop appreciating what is right in front of you. You live as if your real life has not started yet. I wish I had questioned that lie sooner. I wish I had asked myself, who decided that happiness had to wait? Who said that peace had to be postponed? Who told me that my life was not enough until it looked impressive to someone else? If you are listening to this and you feel like you are constantly waiting for your life to begin, I want you to pause for a moment. Ask yourself this simple question. What if there is no later? What if this is it? What if the life you keep postponing is the only one you get? That lie shaped my entire life, and it took me decades to realize how much it cost me. 2. Always preparing, never living. Once I accepted that lie, everything in my life became about preparation. I was always getting ready for something. Getting ready for the next stage, the next promotion, the next milestone, the next version of myself that would finally feel complete. I told myself that once I reached a certain point, I would slow down. Once things were stable, I would enjoy myself. Once I had enough saved, enough achieved, enough proof that I mattered, then I would live fully. Until then, life felt like a checklist. Years passed this way, decades really, and I became very good at planning. I planned for the future with precision. I planned finances. I planned responsibilities. I planned security, but I did not plan joy. I did not plan rest. I did not plan moments that made me feel alive. I postponed trips because there was always something more important. I postponed hobbies because they did not feel productive. I postponed conversations because there was always another task waiting. I told myself I was being practical, but in reality, I was teaching myself that living fully was not allowed yet. One day, I realized something painful. I had built a life that looked complete from the outside, but felt unfinished on the inside. I had prepared so well for the future that I forgot to live in the present. I had created stability, but not fulfillment, structure, but not meaning. The strangest part is this. I do not remember most of the years I spent preparing. They blur together. Long days, long weeks, always moving forward, never being here. But I remember the rare moments when I stopped preparing and actually lived. Those moments stand out clearly. They still feel real. That is when it finally hit me. A life spent only preparing is a life half-lived. Preparation without presence slowly turns into avoidance, and one day you wake up and realize that the future you were preparing for has quietly become the past. If you are always waiting to feel ready before you enjoy your life, you may end up waiting forever. Life does not begin when everything is perfect. It begins when you decide to stop postponing it. 3. Measuring life by other people's standards. Another part of the lie I believed was that there was a correct way to live, a standard I had to meet, a path I was supposed to follow. And instead of asking what I wanted, I spent most of my life asking how I compared. I compared my career to others, my income, my house, my progress. When someone my age earned more, I felt behind. When someone achieved less, I felt relieved. I rarely asked whether any of it actually made me happy. I only asked whether it looked right. Slowly, without realizing it, I let other people define success for me. I chased goals that impressed others even when they did nothing for my inner life. I made decisions based on how they would be judged, not how they would feel. And the more I measured myself against others, the further I drifted from myself. The problem with living by comparison is that the finish line keeps moving. There is always someone doing better, someone further ahead, someone younger, richer, or more admired. And when your worth depends on comparison, peace becomes impossible. I see now that I wasted so much energy trying to keep up, trying to prove I belonged, trying to show that I was doing life the right way. And in doing so, I ignored the most important question of all. Is this life true to me? There were moments when I felt a quiet dissatisfaction, a sense that something was missing. But instead of listening, I worked harder. I assumed the answer was more effort, more achievement, and more approval. Only later did I understand the truth. A life measured by other people's standards will never feel like your own. And no matter how successful it looks, it will always feel borrowed. If you are constantly comparing your life to someone else's, I want you to know this. You are not behind. You are not failing. You may simply be following a path that was never meant for you, and realizing that sooner could save you years. 4. The inner voice I ignored. There was always a quiet voice inside me. It did not shout. It whispered. It would speak up in the in-between moments, on quiet Sunday mornings, during long drives, or while I watched my children play in the backyard. It would ask me things I did not want to answer. Are you truly happy? Is this what you dreamed of? Are you living your life, or someone else's version of it? I ignored that voice for most of my life, not because I was arrogant, not because I thought I knew better, but because I was afraid. Afraid of what I would hear if I really listened. Afraid that if I stopped long enough to feel, I would realize how lost I had become. Instead of listening to that inner voice, I drowned it out with busyness, with work, with noise. I filled my schedule, my mind, my days, so that I would not have to face the discomfort of truth. And slowly, the voice got quieter. Not because it stopped speaking, but because I stopped tuning in. That voice asked me to create, to rest, to play, to connect. It wanted me to write stories, to travel with no plan, to paint badly, to try new things just because they made me feel alive. But I labeled those things as distractions, luxuries, childish indulgences. I told myself I did not have time for them, that they could wait, that real life had more important priorities. What I see now at 70 is that voice was never wrong. It was the truest part of me, the most honest, the most human. And every time I ignored it, I moved a little further away from myself. I wonder what would have happened if I had followed that voice, if I had taken more risks, not for money or recognition, but for meaning. If I had made space for curiosity instead of always striving for control. If I had allowed myself to be a little foolish, a little spontaneous, a little more alive. The world teaches us to silence that voice, to be practical, to be efficient, to be successful. But sometimes, being alive means doing something that makes no sense to anyone else but you. If you have an inner voice nudging you towards something softer, something slower, something more creative, please do not ignore it. That is not weakness speaking. That is your soul trying to reach you. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to hear. 5. The cost of not feeling enough. There is a reason I believed that lie for so long. There is a reason I kept chasing, kept comparing, kept postponing joy. Underneath it all, I did not believe I was enough. I thought I had to earn love, earn rest, earn peace. That unless I achieved more, impressed more, or proved myself beyond question, I was not worthy of happiness. So I kept working, kept performing, kept trying to measure up to a standard I never quite reached. No matter how much I accomplished, it never felt like enough, because I never felt like enough. And when you believe you are not enough, the world becomes a place of pressure. Every interaction feels like a test. Every mistake feels like a failure of identity. Every rest feels undeserved. I wish someone had told me earlier that worth is not something you earn. It is something you already have, simply because you exist. But I did not believe that, so I became my own harshest critic. I dismissed compliments. I downplayed success. I never allowed myself to fully feel proud or satisfied. I chased approval in subtle ways, in how I spoke, in how I dressed, in the decisions I made, even when I seemed confident. I was carrying a quiet desperation to prove that I mattered. And do you know what that kind of living does? It wears you down. It exhausts the joy out of your days. It creates a version of life where everything is conditional, where peace is always one step away, just beyond your next achievement. It took me a long time to see it, but I finally understand that nothing outside of me was ever going to fix what I had not faced inside of me. I needed to stop proving and start accepting. I needed to learn that I was already enough, not because of what I did, but because of who I was. If you are living under the weight of not feeling good enough, I want to say this clearly. You are not a problem to solve. You are a person to be loved. You do not need to do more to be worthy. You do not need to become someone else to be accepted. You are already enough. The world may not always reflect that truth, but you can choose to live by it anyway. And when you do, everything changes. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop carrying the invisible burden of proving your worth. I only wish I had put it down sooner. 6. The wake-up came quietly. There is a popular idea that people wake up after some big dramatic moment, an accident, a divorce, a loss, a sudden realization that shakes their whole world. And while that may be true for some, it was not true for me. My wake-up did not come with a crash. It came with silence. I was 63 years old, retired. The kids were grown. My calendar was finally empty, and for the first time in decades, there was no job to rush to, no emails to answer, no endless list of tasks that kept me distracted. At first, I thought I would feel free. I had worked for this moment. I had saved. I had sacrificed. I had done everything I was supposed to do. But when the noise stopped, when the busyness faded, I was not met with peace. I was met with emptiness. The house was quiet. The phone barely rang. And when it did, it was usually someone trying to sell me something. I would make coffee and sit at the kitchen table staring out the window at the same trees I had ignored for years. I had time now, but I did not know what to do with it. The most painful realization was not that I had failed. It was that I had simply disappeared from my own life. Somewhere along the way, I had become a stranger to myself. I knew how to work. I knew how to meet expectations. I knew how to manage responsibilities, but I did not know how to simply be. How to sit with myself without feeling anxious or restless. How to enjoy a day without needing to accomplish something. And then, one morning, it hit me like a quiet wave. I was 63, and I could not remember the last time I had felt truly alive. Not productive, not successful, alive. I had waited so long for life to begin, I missed the fact that it had been happening all along. The birthdays I rushed through, the dinners I skipped, the conversations I half listened to, the sunsets I never noticed. All those little moments I thought were distractions from my goals. They were the life I had been waiting for, and I let most of them slip by. The world tells us that life begins once we accomplish enough, but I learned the hard way that life is not a destination. It is not waiting for you at the end of a long road. It is right here, in the ordinary, in the simple, in the quiet. My wake-up did not come in a hospital bed. It came in my own living room, sitting in a chair I had barely used, looking at my hands, and realizing that I had no idea what brought me joy anymore. That was the moment I decided to change, not in some dramatic way. I did not sell everything or move to a new country. I just started saying yes to life again, yes to phone calls, yes to morning walks, yes to trying new things even if I was bad at them. Yes to sitting in silence and listening to what my soul had been trying to say for years. Waking up does not always mean changing everything. Sometimes it just means finally noticing what is already here. Sometimes it means remembering that your life is not just a list of responsibilities. It is also made of smiles and sunrises and the feeling of warm coffee on a slow morning. And when you wake up to that, really wake up, you realize it is not too late. But the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to find your way back. 7. The truth I know now. Now that I am 70, people sometimes ask me what I would do differently, what I would go back and change. My answer is simple. I would stop waiting. That is the truth I know now, that life is not something you earn after proving your worth. It is not something that comes only after you check all the boxes and achieve all the milestones. Life is not a reward. It is a gift, and it is meant to be lived now. I used to think I had to deserve happiness, that I needed permission to rest, that joy had to be justified. I thought I had to do everything right before I could allow myself to slow down, laugh, enjoy, or even just breathe. But here is what I have learned with full honesty. You do not have to wait for your life to feel whole. You do not have to wait for everything to be perfect. You do not have to reach some invisible finish line before you start living fully. You are allowed to love your life now, even if it is not finished, even if you are still healing, still growing, still figuring things out. The truth is, there is no perfect moment, no final stage where everything makes sense. Life will always be a little messy, a little unpredictable, but that does not mean it is not beautiful. You are allowed to rest before you are tired. You are allowed to smile before you have it all figured out. You are allowed to take up space, to slow down, to be proud of small steps. You do not have to constantly earn your right to be at peace. It took me decades to realize that. Decades of measuring myself by things that did not matter. Decades of telling myself I needed to be more, do more, have more. Now I look at the sky longer. I talk to strangers. I read books slowly. I sit in silence without guilt. I call people just to say I love them. I take walks not to burn calories, but to feel the world around me. I laugh more. I judge less. And I say thank you for things I used to overlook. The truth I know now is not complicated. It is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is simple. But it changes everything. Here it is. You are already enough. And this moment, right now, is your life, not the one you are preparing for, not the one you are chasing, this one. So please, do not wait as long as I did. If there is something calling to you, listen. If there is someone you miss, call them. If there is a part of yourself you buried, go find it. If there is a quiet voice in you saying, "This is not all there is," honor it. Because one day you will look back, and the question will not be, "Did I do enough?" It will be, "Did I live enough?" And you still have time to answer that with yes. A quiet truth that stays with you. If there is one thing I hope you take from everything I have shared, it is this. You do not have to wait to begin living. You do not have to finish proving yourself. You do not have to be perfect or healed or admired before you are allowed to feel peace. You are already worthy. Not someday, today. I spent most of my life believing that happiness was something I had to chase, something I had to earn. But in the quiet moments after the noise fades, I finally learned the truth. Happiness is not a finish line. It is a way of walking. And joy does not come from what you achieve. It comes from how present you are while you live. So if your soul is tired, if you are waiting for some moment to begin, let this be that moment. Not because I say so, but because you know deep down, life is too short to keep postponing what matters most. You still have time. Not forever, but enough. Enough to choose peace. Enough to forgive yourself. Enough to finally come home to your own life. And maybe that is the only thing we were ever meant to do.